Okay, just wanted to check in with you guys because it's getting towards the end of the semester. We've got kind of a lot of things that we have to get done. Certainly at least reviewed by the end of the semester because I'm going to have I'm going to have the final coming up. And so today I'm going to cover public opinion. I also just wanted to point out on the screen back here, you can see that oil's made its comeback back up to around $17 a barrel. You can also see that when it comes around that 10-year treasury bond has gone below 0.6% again, and so we'll see whether or not it stays down there. In my opinion, I actually think that it's going to go lower than that and could even possibly go negative, where they pay you negative interest rate to keep it. And again, just back there on the screen, you can see that at some point it'll be the Dow going by, and the Dow is up today 187 points. And the thing that's kind of interesting with that is there's something else pushing it up, because Boeing, which is normally such a big drag on it, is actually down today. So so there's something else, probably tech stocks, that are pushing it up. All right, anyway, that's just a quick overview of those things. And by the way, if you haven't taken your midterm exam yet, that 10-year treasury rate's on there, so keep that in mind when you do take it, and try to remember to take that. Today I was going to talk about public opinion, and public opinion is just what people's opinions are that particular moment, and they change a lot, right? Depending on what's going on in the world, what's going on in the economy, public opinion is going to change a lot. Political culture is different. Political culture changes slowly, like the idea of, I don't know, let's say Medicare or Medicaid. It slowly came in, but now how could we get rid of it? Because people would be like, well, we can't get rid of that. That's so important to people. But of course, prior to 50 years ago, we didn't even have it. And so those types of things that sort of get ingrained are much different when you're talking about political culture compared to public opinion. And so today we're going to talk about public opinion. And the most important thing when we're talking about political public opinion is what's going on in polling. What do people think about specific issues? And then politicians can sort of like change their message based on that sort of thing. And so when you're looking at political polling, you're going to look at like basically what's called scientific polling. And so this guy, George Gallup, is the one who's like credited with really coming up with the idea of scientific polling. And of course, there's a lot that goes into these numbers and figuring it all out, but I'm just going to review a couple of things and talk about what those are. And so we've got a sample size, and then we've got margin of error. And those are the things that are going to play a big role in how public opinion polls work. So if you think of a sample size, we've got 328 million people in the United States. Test question. And if you've got 328 million people, how many do you need to poll to find out what the true sense is, what the true consensus is of the way people feel about an issue or a politician or whatever it is that you're polling? And so if you think of it this way, 328 million people, I don't know, maybe we could need to ask 100 million people. For sure, you'd get a really good idea if you asked 100 million people. It's not feasible. And so the number is actually kind of small compared to what we actually have. Even if you had like 800 people, you could get a pretty good consensus of the way people feel about an issue. And so think about who's in 800 people. You'd get somebody from Florida, you'd get somebody from South Dakota, you would get a man, you would get a woman, you'd get a teacher, you'd get a fireman, you'd get a business person, you'd get somebody old, you'd get somebody young, and you get somebody middle-aged. And so those people are all going to represent hundreds of thousands of people in this poll, but you want to get like some sort of a cross-section of people. And so that's all part of the sample size. And if you have 100,000 people that are being represented by just a couple, that's going to give you a good direction of which way they're going. The other part that you'll see on a poll, and if you pull up a poll like in the newspaper or something like that, you're going to see that there's this thing called margin of error. And sometimes the margin of error is going to be higher. It could be 6 or 7%, which would be a really high margin of error. You might come across one that's maybe 3%, especially with political polling. And so when we start looking at Trump versus Biden, for instance, they're going to have this margin of error. And as we get closer to the election, that margin of error is going to go lower because people have decided who they're going to vote for, and it's close enough for them to know. Right now, people are probably going to be like, well, I'm not sure exactly who I want to vote for, so that margin of error is probably going to be a little bit higher. And then you also have like a large number of respondents who aren't sure yet. And so that's going to be another part of it, that they're not sure yet. So this political polling is going to be important. And then for the specific issues that they're looking at, like what's your response to COVID, right? What are you going to do about the economy? Are you going to continue Trump or Biden? Are you going to continue to give some sort of stimulus package? Are you going to continue to give this extra $600 a week in unemployment? And so those things are really going to play a role in the way people look at how they're going to vote for these people in the fall. And of course, what's going on in the economy is going to be important. And I know I've talked about this in class. The economy is not important until the economy is important. And then look out. That's really going to be an important thing that people are going to be looking at. I'll just go over quickly, because this is already going over 5 minutes, some ways that you may want to influence your congressman or any other elected official. Lobbying, certainly we've got people who are going to hire lobbyists like corporations. You can write a letter, or an email these days. You could call in, you could have a protest, and so those things are going to be something that the congressman's going to hear from you directly. Or again, Congress, state representative, any elected official that you're trying to influence. Some other things that you can try to use for like polling, straw poll, really that's just like asking somebody on the street and it's just a random person. If you ask somebody in Chicago, you're going to get a much different answer than if you got it in DuPage County, just asking random people. Push polls is where there's going to be a candidate who's trying to influence your opinion on something. So they're going to be like, oh, did you know that, Pat Quinn wants to let criminals out of jail? Would you vote for someone who wants to let criminals out of jail? And so it's really their campaign trying to influence you on that. And then focus groups is where they bring you into a room, they ask you a bunch of questions to try to just get a better understanding of which direction the public's going. And so those are things that you can read in your book, but I did want to talk about that scientific polling. So keep that in mind, and that stuff will pop up when we get to our final, which will be like next week and the week after that, right? And so stay safe, and I'll check back in with you a little bit later this weekend or early next week to talk about economic policy.